All right, good evening, everybody. You're welcome to this session on facilitating engaging training sessions and meetings. All right, in this session, we're going to touch on all that you need to know to be able to facilitate engaging sessions, and also how do you run an effective meeting so that you can achieve the results for the meeting that you are holding. And I want to say thank you very much, Mr. Liam, for this opportunity to facilitate this session. So I'm going to share my screen now so that we can start. Please let me know when you can see my screen. All right, can we see my screen, please?
Yes, sir.
All right, amazing. Yes. Amazing. All right, so I want us to start with this, okay? And then it says that, how do you feel when you facilitate a great and engaging learning? So has anybody here facilitated a training session before? Anybody? Please, let me get your response. Yes. Deborah is saying, Deborah, you can make your mind and just mute and use the chat. Thank you very much for the response. So Deborah says yes. All right, so another question is, so how did you feel when you facilitate a great and engaging learning session? So you facilitated this session and you know that you did your participants, you know, they were all there, they were engaging all through. How did you feel? How did you feel? Let me get our responses. You can use the chat. Feel free to use the chat. Great. All right. Deborah says great and fulfilled. All right. Do we have any other person respond to this? So let me have one other person respond to this, just so I know that, you know, it's not just myself and Deborah that are here. All right. So how did you feel when, you know, you were done facilitating a great and engaging learning session? How did you feel? One more person because of time. Should I call name now? Okay, very good. I can see in the chat. All right, awesome. All right, thank you, Deji. Deji says, I think I'm motivated to do more. Exactly, that's very correct. Stella, hope you don't mind if I call you Stella. Stella Mary says, inspired and motivated. All right, great. That's right. Kelechuku says, it was awesome and they were happy. So this is what happens. Thank you very much for that response, everyone. And you know what Kelechuku just said now? They were very happy. So it's a two-way thing. When you facilitate a great learning session, all right, you feel good about yourself and your participants are also happy. Please mute your mic. Please mute your mic, all right? So it's a two-way thing when you facilitate a great learning experience. Okay, Ajoke says, I feel a sense of accomplishment. Awesome. That's very, very correct. Now, you see, there's a way to go about it so that you can continuously have an engaging session. And that's the essence of having this training, so that you know what is it that you can add together to make sure that every training engagement that you have, every training session that you facilitate is engaging and the participants benefit from it. All right. Now, next question before we go into this, look at the next question now. Now it says, can you share an experience of a training session or meeting you had that did not go well, right? What did you do and what do you think you could have done better? Can I just have someone unmute and share that with us? All right, an experience of a training session or meeting that you had that did not go well. You know, in your own perspective, you feel it didn't go well, right? What do you think you could have done better? Can we just have one more person share that? You can also just raise your hand so that I know who I'm calling. You can also raise your hand. Okay, very good. Deborah, please go ahead and unmute.
Okay, so there was a time where I had to facilitate a session, it's a virtual session, and I prepared and I thought I was ready and but I didn't do something well. So there was distractions. There were distractions at some point in the training, people muting and some people sharing their screens. There were some issues actually, and it didn't go down well. And at some point, I was stammering and I couldn't get my feet back because the distractions were much. So, and I thought that what I could do better was that next time I should have a backup plan, which means that I should have maybe a second device, maybe my phone or somewhere written where I wrote things down. So should in case of distraction, I could just stop sharing and move down to what I've written down, not minding the distraction.
Very good. That's absolutely correct. Now, let me say to you, thank you very much, Deborah, for sharing that. Let me say something towards that. You see, using PowerPoint is not the only tool used in presentation or training. It is only one of the tools. You can present, and what you do is share a video, and then you speak to that video. All right? It could be a picture that you put up, and then you speak to it. Right? So let me say again that using a PowerPoint slide is only one of the tools that is used when you're facilitating a training. Now, what I've done is to divide this session into two. All right. The first one we'll look at is how you can have engaging training sessions. And then second, we'll look at how do you moderate or facilitate an engaging, meeting session as well. All right. So let's proceed. Now, look at this quote now. This quote by Albert Spencer says, "The great aim of education is not knowledge, but action." So what you need to ask yourself, right, when you want to go into a training session is, what am I trying to drive at? Now, you see, one of the things this will do to you, you need to build confidence. If you are going to be able to deliver a training properly, an engaging session in the training, you need to be confident of what you are delivering. And you see, that way, you yourself must have prepared. We all heard what, Deborah had said to us, right? Even though she had prepared, when it comes to tools, she also felt having an alternative tool, gadget or device would have saved her, and helped her have a better training session on that particular day. So ensure that when you are going into a training session, ensure that you are prepared. Know what your target is. Know where you are driving at. It is very important. All right? We're going to look at that as well as we move on. Now, you see, when you're going into a training, the training does not begin when you start facilitating the session. The training, and this is important for you to have an engaging session, the training actually begins in the planning that you do before the training actually starts, before you start facilitating the session. Mr. Liami, your camera is on, sir. I don't know if that's deliberate. All right. So the training actually begins in your planning while you were, working on the plan. And you see, a great tool that would help you be able to plan a training accurately is the Hardy model. I'm sure Mr. Liami, spoke to this in one of the sessions he had just recently. All right. Now, and that session is on how to handle case studies. You may want to also look at that session again, just have a good idea of handling case studies. But let's go on to this. Now, you see, there is something called planning before you go into training. I say to you again that facilitating a session, having an engaging session, does not begin when you start facilitating. It actually begins from the planning. There's a planning that needs to happen before you facilitate the session. And this is how the planning goes. You can use the Hardy framework for this. The first thing you need to do is you need to analyze. Please pay attention. This is very important. You need to analyze. You need to analyze who your audience are. Who are the people you will be speaking to in that session? You need to know who your audience are. That would help you know how to tailor your training, how to train in that session appropriately. You need to know what is their level of knowledge. What is their level of knowledge? You can do that by deploying a pre-session survey. When you deploy a pre-session survey, that would help you. The result of that would help you understand, what is their level of knowledge. It is also in analysis that you also look at what is the tool I intend, what are the available tools for this session? What are the available tools? It's also an analysis that you get to do that. Now, when you are done with analysis, all right, you've looked at the present knowledge of your participants. You've looked at what's their state as a present, all right? You want to look at the demography of those you are speaking to. The next thing now is to design. You need to design the training. Again, you don't jump into facilitating. You start with analysis. So analysis gives you a depth, right? It helps you have depth in that training session. And then you now go to design. Now you see, it is in design that you decide the delivery method. Will the training be virtual? Will it be in person? Are you going to be deploying an assessment question? It is in design that you decide what are the questions that would happen. All right. You also want to decide what are the graphics that you want to use in that session. Are you using a video? Are you using case study? Are you using question? Are you using pictures? It is also in design that you use that. The next thing is develop. Now, the result of the design is what helps you to develop. Right now, that's the next thing. You now develop the training materials. So the research that you've done in designing, you put it together to develop. Of course, there's also something called a storyboard that you use in designing. These are things you put together, and then you now develop your training material. That's also a very important key. In developing, you put those tools you've gathered together in designing to make up the training material. You see, by the time you are doing this, you are having a concrete knowledge of the content of your training. Let me say to you again, that confidence is important in having an engaging session. If you are not confident, your training will not be engaging. And what you help you to build confidence is to have a good grasp of the material that you are delivering. So you want to now develop the training material. Now, when you develop the training material, the next level is implementation. Now, you see, in implementation, it's in two ways. It's either you are training the trainer, all right? Maybe you are not the one to train the participant directly. You have some trainers you need to train. So you go ahead to train the trainer, or you train the participants. All right, that is in implementation. We'll still speak to these things as we go on. Now, when you are done implementing, you are not done. You now go to evaluate. You want to evaluate what is the impact of the training I have deployed. What value did the participants get from it? And you see, there are 4 levels of evaluation. I'll just speak to this shortly, and then we can move on. We'll move on quickly. There are 4 levels of evaluation when you use the Kirk-Franklin model of evaluation. The first is reaction. You want to look at what is the reaction of the participants to the training I just delivered. That helps you estimate if your training was engaging or not. You can measure reaction by looking at their body language. Are they actually participating? Are they contributing? What do they have to say to this particular question? By deploying a feedback survey, that's also important. When you deploy a feedback survey, you also measure their reaction to that training. And there are different questions you can put when you're deploying a feedback survey. The next thing is you want to measure the learning. Did the participants actually learn? You do this by deploying a post-assessment form. A post-assessment form. This will contain a number of questions that would measure the learning of the participants based on what you taught in that training. Are we following, please? Let me know if you are following. Can you please go into the chat and please put in a yes, just so I know that we are following. I want to be sure that I'm not talking to myself. Can we please put in a yes so that I know that we are following? All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Olufunmilayo. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Deborah. All right, very good. So let's proceed. I can see that we are following. So you want to deploy. So you measure their learning when you deploy a post-assessment. When you go through that post-assessment, you are able to measure the learning rate of your participants. The next thing is you want to measure behavior. How do you measure behavior? On the job. You want to measure behavior by speaking to the peers, the colleagues of the people you've trained. Excuse me. You measure behavior by speaking to their line manager. That way you know that before this person went on this training, this was how this person was behaving. As a result of this training, this is now how this person is behaving. So you measure the impact of the training on behavior. And then lastly, you measure the results by looking at results as well. So how do you measure results? By looking at performance, by looking at, is there increase in sales? Are we making more sales? Are people now, are they more emotionally intelligent? All right. So what is the result of feedback from customers? Are they rating us higher? So you measure results as well. So this is you putting in the work before the facilitation session actually happens. This is a very important part of having an engaging session. Let's proceed. Now, there are certain things you need to pay attention to as the facilitator, as the speaker. And I'm going to touch on that quickly. I've mentioned this before, that it's important that you have a good grasp of the subject matter. Don't go into a session unprepared. Don't go into a session unprepared. Ensure that you go over the material again and again. Ensure you understand each point again and again. The next thing I've said before, I'll mention again, is know your audience. Know the people you are speaking to. It will help you tailor the training to them better. And that way they also can relate and they can talk back to you. For example, I know that the people on this training are professionals. And I know that in one way or the other, you are going to have speaking engagements in your place of work. And so I know that this session, pertains to you. And then we can also engage on real life. You can see that at the beginning of the session, I asked 2 questions. I asked about people who have had successful engaging sessions. Also, I asked about people who, in one way or the other, you facilitated a session and you feel it did not go as planned. So you can see that it's a training that participants can relate to. Let's move on. Also, you want to understand what type of training is it? I mentioned earlier, is it a virtual training? Is it an in-person training? Let me say this to you. It's important to know this because the activities that you put into physical trainings are different from what you put into virtual trainings. There are activities you cannot put into virtual trainings because I'm going to show you some of them. Right? These are things to spice up admission at the beginning of this training, that the essence of this training is to help you understand how to have engaging training sessions. When you communicate the objective of the training and you tie it to the learning outcome, it helps the participant. All right, I think I went off for a bit. Can we still hear me, please? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much. So it just went off. So I'm going to share my screen again. All right. So we're saying that it's important that you communicate the objective. Let's mute our mic. Please mute your mic, please. Thank you very much. So it's important that you communicate the objective of the training and also the learning outcome. That helps that helps the participants be able to relate better to what you're going to speak to them. All right, let's move on. Now, let us look at how to increase audience participation during training sessions. How can you have your audience or your participants participate more when you're having a training session? Now, you see, while you are planning, it is important that you decide how you intend to encourage participation. Now, remember that when I was talking about the ADDIE framework, there was a part of it where we talked about design. In that design, you decide how you intend to engage your participants. And some of it, let's just look at some of it, how you can engage your participants. Now you have to look at, how do I get the audience relaxed and comfortable? You see, participants need to have a sense of relaxation and comfortability. They need to feel at home with what you are saying. And how can you do this? You can help them feel at home by have them contribute. Have them make contributions to what you are saying. Again, we had practiced this. I had asked you certain questions that I needed you to contribute to. And again, so that's the next point that we are looking at. How do you have your participants contribute? Ask open-ended questions. Don't just ask them a yes or no question, right? They will give a yes or no answer. Ask them questions that would make them actually talk or put in the chat box if you're having a virtual session. Also, you want to look at, how can I make my participants laugh? How can I make them laugh? That's also very important. You see, you don't have to be a comedian to do this. You don't have to be, we're going to get there as well. You don't have to be a comedian to make your participant laugh. Just something funny. Could be something that is going on presently. All right. We all know that, and you don't have to force a joke. If it's not coming, skip it. All right. Ensure also that the joke, whatever joke you are telling, relates to what you are doing. All right. So that the essence is not lost. Let's proceed. Now, there's something called icebreakers. And you see, for you to have an engaging session, this is very important. You need to make use of icebreakers. I'm going to share some examples of icebreakers with you as we proceed. All right. Now, there's something called icebreakers. What are they? Icebreakers are activities or games that are designed to welcome attendees and warm up the conversation among participants in a meeting, training class, team building session, or other activities. It is any event that requires people to comfortably interact with each other, and a facilitator is an opportunity to use an icebreaker. Again, going back to when we started this session, I asked 2 questions that made the participants contribute. That is an icebreaker. And we're going to see more examples of it as we proceed. Now, let me give you some examples of icebreakers now. This is very important. Please pay attention to this. If the training you're having is a physical session, I've said to you before that it is not all activity that you can do in a virtual session. There are activities that you can only do when they are physical, when your training is a physical session. For example, look at this activity. One of the icebreakers you can do is, in that particular session, you can just distribute what is it called now? Sticky notes to your participants. Let's say you're having a team building training now, sort of. So you can just distribute sticky notes to your participants. And then, of course, peradventure, your participants know themselves before now. And then you can ask each participant to write something about another participant on the sticky notes. And then afterwards, ask them to stick it behind the person that they wrote about them. So, for example, let me look at the people on the call now. For example, I have Ajoke on the call. And then I write something about Ajoke. And then I stick what I've written behind at the back of Ajoke. And then at the time when everybody now is done writing about, one of the participants or so, you now ask another person to read out what they have written about you. All right. And then you allow them make comments. What do you think about what has been written about you? Do you think it's true? Is it a feedback? Is this something you can relate with? That's an icebreaker. While all of those things are going on, people are laughing, everybody, the whole class is scattered, sort of. Those are the things that would make your training engagement. Another thing you can do, which I'm still going to keep in sessions. Let me quickly say this to you. When you're having training sessions, one of the things that will make sessions engaging is to gamify it. What do I mean? Make it competitive. You can say, you put them into groups, put your participants into groups, depending on the number of participants you have. Maybe 5 in a group, across 5 groups or so, depending on your class size. And then you tell them, for each question that you get, your group will get so mark. You see, people love competition. And so when you gamify your learning, when you gamify training sessions, it makes your class engaging. And then maybe you now tell them the group that wins will get these gifts, will get that. I remember there was a training we had in my former organization. We had a training for managers and directors. All right, we had a training on business communication. And then we put them into group, and then we told them, so we gave them a case study and told them, so your group discuss it and then choose a lead that will come present for you. All right. And then the best group will get chocolates. Even though what we put in it is just chocolate, I tell you, the level of engagement was so high. Come and see people discussing in their group, and then when it was time to present, we also gave room for another group to counter the group that is presenting at the end of their speaking time. To say that, okay, I think what you've said there is wrong. I think what you said there is not right. You make your training fun when you do that. And then you have an engaging session. All right. Another thing you can do if your training is virtual is to use polls. We know that Zoom has poll. In fact, we can do a poll now if we need to. Zoom has poll. And then when you put up a poll, you can then discuss the response of the poll. You can discuss it. Also, ask an interesting question. Look for a question that relates to the training you're having, and then ask that question. Also, ask a question that will make your participants raise their hand. Say, how many people, love to do this in the organization? In your present role, how many people are doing this? What that does for you is that, you see, when people raise their hand, people that were not engaged in the training before, they begin to look around to say, what did the facilitator say? What did she say? What did he say? Right? Because they can now see people raising their hand. So that helps people participate more. Also use quizzes. Use quizzes and brain teasers. All right? Put up a brain teaser and let your people respond to it. That is another thing that will make your training engaging. Now, let me ask this quickly. In a training session, my Mr. Ali, my dad used this, and then I would want to use this in this training as well. Now, let me ask you, everybody, you can unmute, because I want you to tell me the reason why you think this is your answer. Who is Richard presently in the present Nigeria, in the states that we're in? Who is Richard? A fuel attendant or a QS merchant? Please, I want you to unmute and tell us. Who do you think is Richard? And please, don't just tell us your reason. Tell us why. Okay, I can see Joy. Joy, go ahead and speak. After Joy, I will take Deborah. Joy,
okay. All right,
Joy,
good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, great. So I actually think the POS merchant is richer at this point in time because we all know the situation of the country where there's stiffer and tighter method of getting cash. So the POS merchant here is charging more than they should. So I think they're actually the most richest person at the moment. They're the richer of the two, rather.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Joy, for that answer. Thank you very much. Deborah, I can see your hands. Please go ahead. After Deborah, I'll take it.
I think the fuel attendant is richer now. Because I encountered something last week where I went to the filling station and to get fuel, 20,000 naira worth of water getting, they said I must give cash. So I cannot do transfer and I cannot use POS. And the POS is bad. And they actually lied. So apparently they get cash from us. They return it to the POS. They go to that POS. They return it to the POS guy. They share the cash. It says 4,000 naira to get 20,000 naira. And the fuel attendant will still charge for the keg that I brought to get the fuels. They are even charging more than usual now. So, in fact, it's a difficult.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Deborah, for sharing that. Thank you. Are we seeing different perspectives? All right. Beauty, do you still want to speak? I saw Beauty raise her hand the other time. Beauty.
Yes, I would say, hi, it's Beauty. I would say the POS merchant, it's richer.
Okay. Why? Tell us why. Why do you think so? Beauty, are you still there? Okay. So let's just take one more person and then we'll go on.
Hello.
Yesterday, go ahead. We can't hear Beauty anymore. Yesterday, go ahead. Let's hear you.
Okay, all right. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yesterday.
Okay. Can you hear me? I don't know if I'm here.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Okay, I would say is the fuel attendant.
Yes.
And the reason that most of these POS guys are even relying on them to get cash, because since bank is not even giving enough that it could dispense to people. So what happened is fuel attendants, they're going to charge you extra for you even using buying fuel, especially if you want to buy on kegs. And they won't take POS and they won't take transfer, but they want it in cash. So while these POS guys are also relying on them to get the cash. So it's more like they are selling the cash to the POS while the POS is selling it. So the POS is even using like a second hand, but why the fuel attendant get more?
Oh.
Great. That's my point of that. Thank you very much. Thank you. All right, Mr. Olusiji, do you want to share with us as well? Please go ahead, sir. Okay, I guess not. So let's take Sarah. Are you speaking, sir? Okay, so Sarah, go ahead and speak. Let's take Sarah lastly, and then we'll move on. Sarah, what do you think? Who is richer, the fuel attendant or the POS merchant?
Okay.
All right, I guess Sarah is having some issues with her network.
Okay, so I think, good evening, everyone.
Yes, good evening, Sarah.
Okay, so I think fuel attendants, are richer. Okay. Why? Because they make money from two ends. They make money from, from the sale of the fuel and from selling the money to the POS guys. So they are making money on both ends. It's like a chain, like a manufacturing chain. They are basically receivers of the cash, or will I say inputs, so to say, and then they give to, what's it called, the POS guy, which in turn now gives to the final consumer. So I would say the fuel attendant actually makes more money, because they are receiving from both ends. They are receiving from the consumers, like raw cash from the consumers, and then with interest, making money from interest on fuel. We also have fuel in fuel. They are making money from the cash. And also, apart from the interest as well, they are also making money. Sorry, can you hear me?
As well.
When they get transferred to, they also receive additional funds as POS charges. So they have a whole lot of ways to make money than the POS guys, because the POS guys are like the middlemen who now in turn sells to the final consumer. So I would say the fuel attendants are actually making more.
Sorry, I think that was my network again. All right, but thank you very much, Sarah, for sharing that with us. That was my network tripping off. All right, but we are back. Please confirm you can see my screen, everyone.
Yes, we can see.
You can see
yes, please. We can see.
Okay. All right, so let's move on, everyone. Thank you very much for the contribution. Thank you very much. Now, you see what we just did now was actually to make the class engaging. So you can see that just by having people speak to it, right, you are already having an engagement. Now, let's something else you can do, have an engaging session. Look, it's important that you use group exercises. I spoke to this already, but there's something now. Group people and have them work on group activities. This is very important. Ensure that you put people in groups. Also, you see on Zoom as well, Zoom has that feature sessions. So you can put people in different groups and then they can have discussions, then they can then come to present. I already talked about gamification, where you can gamify the learning and then have compete against different groups. Now, something else you can do is in a team building training. All right, apologies, my network again. I really can't tell what's going on now. Let's proceed, please. Let's proceed. That's my network. All right, let's proceed. So I was talking about using, you can use those stack of cups, red cups like this. And then, do we know what I'm talking about, please? Let me know in the chat. Do you know what I'm referring to when I tell what I'm talking about? The red plastic cups, those disposable cups. I'm not getting responses yet. Do we know what I'm referring to? What that you can use in a team building training? Okay, very good. Thank you, Vivian. All right, very good, very good. So, that those disposable red cups, the big ones, you can just stack them and then use them, so you can say that the group that is able to stack the highest is the one that wins. That teaches them team dynamics because, it's a competition. They are racing against time. Also, they need to know how to put each person in their place. Not everybody will contribute. So you're going to have people who will be the ones stacking the cups. You're going to have some other people who will be the ones at the back cheering those people on, telling them, oh, I think you should do it this way. I think you should do it this way. All right, so that way they are learning team dynamics in your training session. And already it's making your training interesting. Another thing you can do is to have role plays in your training session. Have role play. All right. So, I did this in a training I did for a customer service related training. And then one of the things we emphasize in customer service is that so after the training session, I had them do role play. So I had one of the participants play the role of an hungry customer representative. So I told the hungry customer, act as if you're hungry, blast, the customer service representative, and then you, the employee, answer him and ensure you're able to calm him down. And you see, by acting that yourself in that shoe, so you can have them, do what is called a role play. That would also, make the training fun and then make your training engaging as well. Now, this is the last part we would touch on when we're talking about again, apologies. I really can't tell what is going on right now. I need to switch network if this happens again. Okay. All right, so let's go on. So I was saying that use numbers or data. This is something that would make your training engaging, make your training concrete, back up your point goals, right? And you can also where you're getting the figure from. Helps the employee to trust the data you're giving them. Also, use quotes from trusted and famous people that relate to the subject. If you remember at the beginning of the learning, the impact of education, there was a quote that we had at the beginning. All right, so you can also use quotes. That also, there's a way that also, hammers on the All right, so I'm already working on getting myself on another network now so that we can have a better training session. All right, so let's go ahead. Apologies for the flute, please. I'm working on that already. Okay, so let's proceed now. All right, so I was saying use visual aids. You can use videos, use pictures. All through the session, we have been using pictures to communicate these things. And we're still going to see more of it as we proceed. All right, now what action will you like your participant to take as a result of the training? Communicate that. At the beginning of this session, we had talked about, talking about the learning outcome for each of your, for your educators. Now, organize your slides or points in a logical structure so that it is easy. Ensure that your slides easy to relate with. If you are using presentation slides, easy to relate with. Now let's move on quickly so that we can now touch on meetings. How do you use meetings? How do you facilitate great meetings? Now, there's a video I have here. I want us to watch this video, and then we are going to have a discussion on it afterwards. I'm going to play it. Once I play it, please let me know if you can see the video. Can you see and hear, please? Can you see and hear? All right, so I'm resharing the video now. All right, so I'm going to reshare now.
Decision.
Please let me know if you can.
Yes, we can see and we can hear.
Hear.
Yes, we can.
All right.
We have to come to a decision.
I still don't fully understand.
We've been over this. If we'd just gotten the materials in advance, then we wouldn't still be. Whoa. I'm new, I didn't know this room was taken.
Quite all right. We're in a bit of a marathon. We started at 9:30.
But it's only 9 now. What is Fox?
Some sort of miniature.
Phone. What, 21?
We can't see again.
If we've just gotten the materials.
But we can hear.
We're stuck on item 1.
Can some...
We can't see again.
Yeah, the network is very bad.
Your network is bad. Okay.
Must be starving.
Selfish, Alan. This is your fault.
It was in 1993.
And then you changed the no in 2007.
The date is confusing.
Look, we've spent a good portion of our...
Hello, sir. Are you still there?
So I think it should be better now. So I'm going to reshare. Apologies again. I'm going to reshare now. I think it should be better. So I'm going to start the video all over again. Please confirm that you can see the video and you can hear. Can we see and hear, please?
Yes, we can see and hear.
We have to come to a decision.
I still don't fully understand.
We've been over this. If we'd just gotten the materials in advance, then we wouldn't still be.
I didn't know this room was taken.
We're in a bit of a marathon at 9:30.
But it's
Is that glowing little box?
television. It's just
What year is it?
2000.
I told you this. Don't be selfish, Alan. Look, it appears we spent a good portion of our lives trying to get...
Again, I have to switch my network. Apologies. So I think we should be good now. So I've switched my network and I believe we should be good now.
Confusing.
Look, it appears we've spent a good portion of our lives trying to get past item 1. They've probably invented flying cars by now and cured every disease.
Not exactly. We can take pictures on our phones, and they have robot vacuums, but nobody really likes them. Oat milk is popular.
They milk oats.
We're getting off track. Let's go back to item 1.
Shall we order steak for lunch?
No! This meeting has to end. The decision doesn't even matter anymore. There's robot vacuums. Let's just all vote no and be free.
I was actually leaning towards yes.
Good. Yes. Let's vote yes. Show of hands for yes on item 1.
It's a tie. We're deadlocked.
I'll update the minutes.
Out of curiosity, what is item 1?
Whether or not to invest in personal computers for the office.
I still think they'll never catch on.
Back to the meeting. Shall we pick up from item 1?
All right, so I can't, Itinolua said, so he or she did not hear anything. So let me have our feedback. Did we hear anything?
Yes, we did. We did.
Okay, very good. All right, very good. All right, very good. So let me get our feedback. Let me get our feedback on that video. What do we think? What do we think about that meeting session that happened there? let's just take 2 people because of time. What do we think? I hope we're able to capture the video. We saw the video and heard it. So what did we, let me just take 2 people to make comments. Anybody want to speak quickly because of our time? Okay. So let me, Vivian, were you able to see, did you see the video? Hi, Vivian, are you there?
Yes, I am. I saw the video in bits, like it was just off and on, it's breaking, and sometimes the audio was faster than the visuals. So I was just able to make a little bit out of it, that there were arguments out of the meeting.
Okay, let me see. Okay, I would have actually loved us to discuss on the video, but because we couldn't see. So now let me give us a summary of what happened in that video. So the video, they had been in the meeting for so long a time that they started the meeting sometime in 1990 something. It was now 2000, it was now 2021, and they didn't know so much had passed. All right, they didn't know Android now exists, you know, a whole lot of things, and they were still on agenda 1 for that meeting. They couldn't agree on agenda 1. They couldn't agree on, come to a conclusion on agenda 1. All right, so the meeting had no beginning and then was, of course, was not heading to anywhere successful. That actually is an example of a bad meeting, right? Meetings shouldn't be like that. Meetings shouldn't, you know, be for too long a time. And you see, what would help you guide against that is that your meeting should have an agenda. It is important that your meeting have an agenda for your meeting, right? Do not have a meeting and then have a time you intend to end the meeting. Have a starting time, have an ending time. That's important to guide you in your meetings. All right, so let's proceed on, you know, seeing much more meetings. So there are 2 main areas to keep in mind when you're facilitating a meeting. Now, in this case, you are in the position of a facilitator. You are the one facilitating the meeting. So there are 2 things to keep in mind. Number 1 is you are to create a space where everyone feels valued and is able to participate fully in discussions and decisions. That's what you're meant to do. Create a space where everyone feels valued, all right, and is able to participate fully in discussions and decisions. Also, help a group work efficiently and get tasks done, such as sharing information, reaching decisions, hearing conflict, or getting on with jobs. So when you are facilitating a meeting, these are your responsibilities. So maybe you are the team lead, you are the manager. These are your 2 core responsibilities in a meeting. Let's proceed. So now let's look at, you know, also certain things you should keep in mind. And these are the things we are going to touch in this particular part of the session. We're going to look at facilitation task. We look at facilitation skills. What are the skills you should put in mind? We're going to look at decision-making in meetings. How do you facilitate decision-making? And also, lastly, we'll look at meeting tools. What are the tools also that you should bear in mind in meetings? All right, so let's start with facilitation task. Now, of course, we already talked about that involves different tasks depending on the situation. You can have more than one facilitator depending on the meeting that you are having. All right, so maybe, you know, you have different sessions in a meeting. So you can have someone come up and take a part and then the other person take a part. Are we still following? Please let me know. Please let me know. Yes. That's okay, very good. Thank you very much. So you can have one person take a part and then the other person take the other part. So it's okay to have more than one facilitator in a meeting, depending on the agenda of the meeting. Now, the next thing is help the group decide on a realistic agenda and time frame for the meeting. So you should have an agenda of the meeting You should also have a time frame. Your meeting should not be too long. All right? You should decide the meeting will run from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. or from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Have a starting time, have an ending time. You should cast that out so that everybody knows what the time frame is. Another thing you should note is find out about accommodating any access requirements in a group that would help people to participate. All right? What are the things that you should put in place that would help people to participate? Is there a way that the seating arrangement should be? All right? Is there someone that needs to sit in a particular place? All right? So is there a way that information should be processed? Now, all of those things are what you should consider when you're putting up a meeting. Also, regulate the flow of discussion. As the facilitator, this is very key for you. Learn to regulate the flow of discussion. You see, there are people in your meeting who are very valuable. You see, they have the information, they have the, the wisdom that you need to actually get the job done, but they may not be the ones that talk so much. They may actually be the quiet ones. As the facilitator, you should know how to drive such people out so that they are able to contribute. Also, note people who have the most relevant experience and then make sure that you get input from such people. So as the facilitator of the meeting, ensure that you regulate the flow. The next is keep the meeting focused on one item at a time until the issue is resolved. Do not jump from one item to another. Do not jump from one agenda to another. Ensure that you keep the meeting focused. And lastly, on facilitation task is introduce facilitation tools where applicable. An example of that is you can have small group discussions to increase participation. What does this mean? If the people in the meeting are a large volume of people, maybe you're having a town hall meeting or something, and then you're having a large volume of people, at a point you can decide to break that, that meeting into smaller groups, have people decide, have people, meet in that smaller group, and then come back together to then make input based on what they've discussed. That would also help you have a great meeting experience. Now let's go on to three core skills you need when it comes to facilitation. 3 core skills you need. The first is active listening. As a facilitator of a meeting, it is important that you are able to listen. All right? The conscious effort to get an accurate understanding of where someone is coming from. Do not cut in when someone is speaking. Do not assume when they've not landed. All right? Even though, you may think that maybe what this person wants to say, ensure that you hear people out in your meeting. So be someone that listens actively. The next is questioning. You can use questions to drive out points from people. You can also use points to clarify issues. A colleague in a meeting is trying to make a point. You can ask a question so as to clarify what the person is saying. All right? And then lastly is summarize. As the facilitator in a meeting, you should also learn to summarize. When a colleague makes a point, you can summarize what they've said. And the essence of that is so that everybody can get what that person has said. For example, if I hear you correctly, you have said so and so and so and so and so. So that by summarizing, every other person in that meeting can be able to understand and relate with what that colleague has shared. Now, this is in facilitating decision making. So I want us to please pay attention to this because in many of our meetings, we are going to need to make decisions. All right, so this is to facilitate decision making. There's an issue you want to tackle. Open out. Open out means be open to what people have to say. Be open to people's suggestions. All right, allow people make input, allow people make points. So open out. After you take in the input, explore the different suggestions that they've made. All right, look at what this person has said, explore it. Is it workable? Look at what this other person has said, explore it. Is it workable? After that, then come together. All right, so come together and let everybody be able to agree on a point. And then you can then, from that point, decide on what you want to do going forward on that particular task, on that particular issue. Again, open out, take input from everybody that is ready to contribute, that wants to contribute, explore the different opinions from everyone, and then come together, all right, on those various points, decide we can use this, we cannot use this, and then lastly, you can now decide, together with everybody on the particular solution to that issue. Now, this is the last thing we're going to touch, and is on meeting tools, essential tools for your meeting, essential tools for your meeting. The first is agenda. This is very key. For you to have a successful meeting, you should have an agenda of for your meeting. Don't go into your meeting without an agenda. And it is in fact important that you also ensure that every other person that will be in that meeting also has the agenda. What that will do for you is that it helps them be able to think before they come into that meeting. They reason things out before they come for your meeting. Also go around. Now, in your meeting as well, it's important. See, and of course, I know that we would have experienced this. When you're holding meetings, it is possible that not everybody will contribute to your meeting. By going around in that meeting, you're able to take opinions from everybody in the meeting. So one after the other, you can have everybody speak in that meeting, and then you can take everyone's opinion. The next tool that you should take note of in your meeting is idea storm. Now, you see, this is another thing we should pay attention to, especially when you are trying to actually arrive at a solution for a problem in a meeting. When you are starting, don't don't stereotype any idea that anybody is bringing. Take in ideas as they are bringing it. Write it down. You can have a board in your meeting room where you get to note those things down, right? Note down each of those ideas, note down each of those ideas. By the time you are done taking in all of those ideas, now go through those ideas one after the other. This is problem solving, actually. Go through those ideas one after the other, and then be able to decide, okay, so this will work, or we can tweak this a bit so that it can then work for what we want. All right, so be open to taking, it's called idea storms. All right, taking ideas from everybody, all right, and then dive deeper into those ideas to decide which of them will work for you. The next you should consider is using smaller groups. I already touched on this before. In your meetings, you can break people into smaller groups, have them discuss, and then come together again to make decisions. And then lastly is breaks and energizers, right? You can have breaks in your meeting. If your meeting time is quite long, learn to have breaks so that people can relax, all right? And then they can come back to continue the meeting. Or you can have a quick group game. All right, break people into groups and then have games. People just discuss in their groups, have games, and then they come together again to, to discuss. All right, so we're going to stop here. We're already past time. And then if we have questions, I'm going to take 1 or 2 questions, and then we're going to round off. So any questions, please? If you have a question regarding the training part or the meeting part, you can just ask a question, or you can raise your hand, right? And then I'll just answer 1 or 2 questions, and then we'll round off. So any questions, please? You can just use the raise hand button so that I see you. I can see you very clearly, and then you can unmute to ask your question. All right, thank you very much, Stephen. So Stephen says a meeting of 2 hours, can it be broken down with games in between? All right, so I would say that number one, it depends on the agenda of your meeting. Where are you driving the meeting to? All right, so a 2-hour meeting is not too long a meeting, actually. 2 hours is not too long a meeting. It's a meeting you can actually sit in and finish up at a stretch. All right, but then if you want to have games in between, well, that's fine. All right, that's also okay as well. You can just have, a short discussion, just bring up a discussion of, of course, this would mean if you're having games in between your meeting, it is not in that meeting you're trying to decide the game you want to have. You must have planned that ahead of time to say that this meeting is for so duration. By this time, we'll go on a break and then we'll just have games in between. But a meeting of 2 hours, I don't think is too long that you now have to have games, right? 2 hours, you can sit into a 2 hours meeting and finish it up. All right. I hope that answers your question, Stephen. All right. And then I can see a question here from Kelechuku. It says, what are the various engagement plan one can use in an engagement, in an organization? So this is not clear. Kelechuku, can you please shed more light? What do you mean by engagement plan you can use in your organization? Do you mean in a training session, or what exactly do you mean? Can you please clarify, Kelechuku? Thank you very much. I can see a comment here that says great delivery. Thank you very much. So Kelechuku, can you please shed more light on that?
I'm not Kelechuku, but I think what he's trying to ask is that what are the ways you can make your employees engaged? Like employee engagement is what he's asking. So it's a way bit from what you are saying, but again, it's kind of engagement for companies. Like how can you engage your employees when it comes to maybe some every Friday, weekly, you do thank God it's Friday, or you do monthly party or something, or you go out. Okay. What are the things? I get your question better.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you for shedding more light on it. All right, so when it comes to employee engagement, right? So there are different interventions you can put in place. She already mentioned some of them, right? You can have TGIF. You can have TGIF once a month. You can have it every Friday, depends on your organization. You can also have, you can also send out trivias, right? Send out trivias. I remember, the last organization I worked before where I am presently. So what we do is every last Friday of the month, we send out trivia questions and then we attach gifts to it, right? So the first maybe 3 people that answers the question correctly, right? So we announce them as the winners and then we give them gifts. So that's also, something you can do for engagement. All right. So that different things also something you could, still look into much more to look at what that, that's a bit far from what we are speaking, but then you can also utilize what we just said. All right. Any other questions, please? Any other questions? If not, we'll just round off here. All right, great. Thank you very much, Ayola, for your comments. All right. So thank you very much, everybody. It was great having us on the call. Yeah, network issues, actually. Network issues, yeah. All right, thank you, Vivian. Thank you very much for the comments. All right, so we're going to stop the session here. And then thank you so much for joining. And then the video, of course, would also be uploaded on the YouTube channel. You can watch again when you want to. Thanks so much, everybody, and do enjoy the rest of the evening.
Thank you, sir.
Goodbye. Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.